Hello guys, for those who don't know me, my name is Shander Huzi and this is another Blender tutorial. Hope you like it.
Okay guys, I'm gonna show you the steps we're gonna go through with this video. First of all, we're going to track her head. I'm gonna show you guys how to do that. Then we're going to apply this tracking data on a object on the 3D view. Then I'm going to briefly show you how to texture this object. Then after that, we're gonna remove the markers we used as reference to track her head. Okay, so we're gonna make her face clean like this. After that, we're gonna remove the green background. Okay, and then we're gonna go to the final compositing where all the magic happens. Okay, so the link to download all the files you need to follow along with me is on the description of this video. You just have to download and you're gonna have everything there. Okay, now we're gonna open up Blender. Our video res was 1280 by 720, and then let's get a 100%, then 2997 for the frame rate, anti-alias and 16. Let's just check 16-bit here. Okay, we're ready to start. Let's remove the standard cube and the standard light. Then let's go to the motion tracking tab. Then we're gonna open up this footage which you guys have. Okay, with the mouse on the video area, you just press P to prefetch. Then after it's finished, the video is gonna run a little bit smoother. The frame range that I want is from frame 40, and up here we don't need this timeline because we already have it here, so we can change this to dope shit. Okay, this will help us when we start to mess a little bit with masks. As we won't track the camera, we will need another object in here, so we just click this plus and there's this object. Okay, then we're ready to go. I think the standard setup for the tracking will be perfect for us. We won't have any problems, I expect. So you just control click and start tracking. Start track. That was awful. Control click, track. Okay, it stopped. It's no problem for us. We just have to reposition it a little bit and then start tracking again. And you can see that it does a pretty good job. So control click, track, control click, track backwards, control click, track. It stopped again. You just have to reposition it. Okay, I think we have enough tracking here, enough trackers. The only thing we need to do before we solve this is to change the camera data, which in this case I used a 600D, but on this Blender version I don't think we have this preset anymore, but that's no problem. I'm only going to change the focal length to 35 and that would do. On the soft panel we have the keyframe A and keyframe B. What's this? Blender asks us to show him which part of this video that moves the most, like which have more perspective difference or the parallax movement. Okay, so I think on this case it's from frame 80 to 130 when she moves her head. Okay, so we just have to solve object motion and we have a 0.7. That's not bad. It could be better, but that's not really bad. And for tutorial purposes, I think we're great with this result. So what we have to do now is to move to the default layout and hit 1 to go to the front view, Control Alt 0 to send the camera there, then G, Z, move the camera up a little bit, let's I'm gonna start the screencast keys here, so if you guys want to see what I'm hitting here on the keyboard. Let's bring our footage here. Okay, the way it works is you have to apply the camera solver constraints to the camera, obviously. I don't know why. Even if we are just tracking the object, we need to apply this to the camera. So camera solver, and we can see that the trackers appears. So if we test this, we can hit Shift A and create a cube. Bring the cube here. Then we can just apply a object solver, select the camera and the object, then the camera. This object is the object that we selected before tracking. It's not the cube. Okay, so he runs away. I don't know why, but that's not a problem. It works. Okay, let's just reposition it, scale it a little bit, then okay. If we hit play, we can see that this cube follows the head perfectly. There's no jump, no slides. It really works, and that's what we need. So why do we need this tracking data? We're gonna use a textured object to project a few designs on her face, and if it follows the head perfectly, it will make the impression that these designs were made for real, right on her face. The ideal way to do that would be to make a perfect model of her head and then apply these textures to it, but I didn't do it. I created a rough modeling just so that I could put some textures on her forehead and on her cheek, on her nose, and that's it. You guys have this object. You can use it or you can just model your own. It's up to you. So I'm just going to import it here. Okay, there's more than one object here, but that's no problem. We just have to delete what we're not going to use. As you can see, it is a simple modeling so that the texture that we apply here acts with the real perspective of a human face. So let's delete this one. And there's more than one here. That's because I used more than one texture and I wanted more control on the compositing. So I created a separate layer for each one. But let's delete this. Let's live with just one for now. Okay, you can see that it doesn't follow. We just didn't apply the objects over yet. So first of all, let's bring its origin closer to it, like origin to geometry. Then we can apply the object solver and select the object and the camera. It runs away, that's no problem. We just have to reposition it. I know that this tracker is for the nose, so we just have to put it close, a little bit close. Okay, go to the camera view and try to reposition it the best we can. Okay, you can see that it follows perfectly. Okay, the texture that I used was made on a software called Krita. It is a free software. It's like Photoshop and GIMP, and it's really great, and I'm gonna show you now. This is the texture that I made on Krita. You can see that here we have our UV layout that I exported from Blender. Then this reference, just so that I could make the texture, and the texture itself. It's like, I don't know, scars. I try to make it look like scars. I don't know if I succeeded, but it doesn't matter. So you just export this texture as PNG, so it carries the alpha data, and then you just import it back on Blender. Here on Blender, you just have to create a new material. Call it whatever you want. I don't know. Texture scars. check shadeless because we don't need the render sliding on this. Then go to the texture tab, create a new texture, and go into image or movie, open, then choose the right texture. Here on the texture panel, you change the mapping mode to UV and then check alpha. Back into the materials tab, we check transparency and bring the alpha 0, so Blender knows that the alpha that comes from the image will be 0. And if we render this out, as I already have one here, you can see that the texture is here. Then we just have to go into shading and check transparent. Okay, so let's go into the compositing. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna clean the markers. We're gonna take off the markers of her skin. So to do that, we start by clicking use nodes. We don't want a render layer now, but we do want a movie clip. Now I have to go into the motion tracking tab, and the way we do this is by creating one mask for each tracker and linking these masks to the trackers. Here at the bottom you can change from tracking to mask, and then just control click and drag, control click and drag, control click and drag. We are not going to close this mask yet, okay? You'll see why in a minute. So control click and drag, control click and drag, and do this for each marker. I'm going to speed up the video so you don't have to watch it all, okay? Okay, after we did all these masks, we can hit A to select all of them, and then hit Alt-C to close, and then V. Then we're gonna choose Auto, so it rounds up the masks a little bit, and then we can adjust the shapes. Okay, now we have to make the masks to follow the trackers. So we do that by selecting one vertex, then hitting Ctrl L to select the others, and then hitting Tab to go to tracking mode, select the track, then Tab again, then Ctrl P. You can see that now the mask follows the track. We have to do this for each one of the masks, so I'm going to speed up the video again, okay? Okay, you can see that the masks are following the trackers, and that's what we want. So now we can go back into the compositing tab. Now we have to import our mask here, so Shift A, input mask, select our mask, and if you Control Shift click and enable backdrop here, you can see that these are our masks. What we're gonna do with this, we are going to make a alpha channel out of this for this clip. So Shift A, converted, set alpha, plug it in there, and then we're gonna take this mask and plug on the alpha. So this is what we have, but we want the inverse. We don't want only the markers to appear. We want to make little holes in her skin. To do that, we just have to invert the color. So color, invert, plug it in there, and that's what we have. So to fill these holes, we're gonna use a filter, inpaint, and plug it in there. If we increase this value, you can see that it fills up her skin, but with some errors. You can see that it kind of brings the pixels together and makes this little point here where it all meets, and we don't want this. To fix that, we're gonna duplicate the set alpha, okay? Then we take this output, plug it in here, and the output of the mask without the invert node plug it in there. Then we have this, and now we can blur it. Like we can add a filter, blur, plug it in here, 20 and 20 pixels. Then we have this. Then we just bring a color alpha over into here and plug the result of that in here. If we check this convert pre-multiplied, it fixes. And now we cannot see any mistakes in here, any errors. So that's the way I found that we can clean the markers of our skin. Now we can group this and go to the next step, which is to take off the green background. So select all of it and Ctrl G. Then we can edit this if we want. And it just helps us to keep things organized. So call it Chroma Clean. And now we can add a keying node. So matte keying. I want to explain all of what the keying does, and I don't really know what everything does here, but hopefully we can make a good alpha channel with it. So let's select a color, just Control and click and drag to pick a average green color from here, and it does a pretty good job. And we just have to adjust the green a little bit, so you just hold shift and drag it so it goes slowly. Okay, it's not bad. Okay, so this keying will take care of this part of the video. I want to have another keying that would take care of this part, because I want more hair detail. Okay, so to do that we have to create a mask that will decide which part is for each keying. And we do that by coming back into the tracking, motion tracking tab, and then creating another mask. Let's call it head mask. And just as before, Control, click and drag. Control, click and drag. Just let's put this on the right direction. And then click Alt C to close it. Make a few adjustments. Okay, select all the masks, go into mask, switch direction, so the vector is outside now, and then you can shift, click and drag to define the feather area of this mask. And then select all of the mask and this tracker and Control P so it follows it. Let's see, you can see that the mask follows it. So let's just make a few adjustments over time here. So to do that, you just enable the auto keying, then click G, enter to create a keyframe. And to see this keyframe here on Dope Sheet, you can check mask, can change to mask, and here on the head mask we have this keyframe. Now we can animate. Now we have a pretty nice mask following her head, and this mask will be very useful because it will define that one of the kings will act only on this area, so we can have more detail on the head. So let's go back into the compositing tab, and then we're gonna input our mask here. So input mask, select our head mask, and then let's duplicate this key, relink this output here, and let's create a color mix. What we're gonna mix in here, we want to mix the matte, so if you Control Shift click on the key twice, you now see the matte of this key. We want to put together the matte of this key with this key controlled by this mask. So we take the matte, plug it in here, take the matte, plug it in here, and the mask will be the factor. And if you Control Shift click, we see the result of it. It's not changed, we didn't mess with it yet, but let's give it some adjustments. So first of all, let's adjust this one here. So let's decrease a little bit of the spill to take off the green, and I don't know, maybe blur 2 pixels so it doesn't have a hard edge in here, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. Okay, I'm liking the result for this first keynote. Now let's play a little bit with the second one. So what we see here is the result of this first node, and what we want to see is the alpha that these two nodes combined together will provide to this chroma clean. Okay, so to do that we have to create another set alpha, plug it in here, and take this result of this mix node and plug it in here. Now what we see here is the math of them both combined, and this one being controlled by this mask area. The node that is making all this happen is this set alpha. So it is taking this output with the right dispute image, making the alpha to be what come from this mix node. I already played a little bit with the screen balance here, just to give more detail to the hair, and I think this is quite good. I know there are some hairs cropped in here, but that was my mistake when I shooted her. The lighting was really strong, and I shouldn't have shooted her on that lighting condition, but for tutorial purposes I think that would do. Okay, I think that the alpha of the video is now ready, so we can select these nodes and group them together with Ctrl G. Then we can go back to this node anytime we want to edit. Let's call this node alpha, and now we can start the main compositing. Let's go back to the full layout. Here we have our mesh, our face mesh, and it has that texture I showed you guys before. Let me just change the shading to GLSL. Okay, this will be the result on top of her face. Pretty nice, huh? We have to go into the layers tab, and let's create another layer and call it texture 1. And on this layer I want only this layer selected, because it's the layer that this mesh is. Why am I creating this layer since we only have this? I want to put in another texture, a glowing one, and then we will create another render layer to put that in, so we have more control on the compositing. Okay, so let's go back into the compositing, and now we hit Shift A, input, and render layer. Then let's select the texture 1 and then put a alpha over and put it on top, and here we have it. You can see that it blends nicely. It kind of looks like it was really painted directly on her face, and this is the result that we wanted. Now let's put in the second texture. Okay, on the original example that I showed you before, you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 texture, 4 different textures, and all these textures were, except for the scar one, were created here on Inkscape. It is a vector graphics free software, and you can see that here we have our UV layout that I brought from Blender, and I have all these designs in here. This one is the one I use as a reference to create scars. Then we have this one and this one, and each one of these had its own mesh, separate mesh on Blender, and its separate render layer, so I could have more control on the compositing. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. I'm going to take this texture, and put in another mesh and another layer on Blender. Let's go back on Blender. We go into the default layout, hit 3 to go to the side view, select this mesh, then hit Shift D to duplicate, and just move it slight a bit to the front of the other, And then on the texture tab, we can just hit this 2 to make a single user of it, because we're gonna change it. Then rename it to texture 2, maybe. Then go into the texture panel. Also hit these 2 here. It's gonna be layout 2. And also these 2. Then let's open up our second texture, which is this one. Now you can see that we have these 2 textures in here. Let's go into the render layer tab and create another one and call it texture 2. Then select the right mesh, which I think is this one. Okay, then move it to the second layer and then go back into the compositing tab. For some reason, this second mesh that we duplicated, that we just created a texture, has another texture on it, and it is making us get a weird result. I don't know why. So let's just delete this and then render again, and we can see that it is going okay. So one thing that's happening is that these 2 mesh are on the same layer, and we don't want this. So let's move the second one into a second layer by clicking M and moving it to a second layer, and then go into the render layer tab. We already created the layer for this one, which is this texture 2. Now here on the compositor, we just have to move it over, then bring in a mix node, change it to add, and bring in another render layer, and then select the texture 2 and plug it in there. Why we did this? So we can have more control on this layer. So let's just hit render. Okay, now it is passing behind the scars just the way I want. So to increase its appearance, let's blur it a little bit. So filter, blur, maybe 2 pixels, and let's add another version of it. Let's just duplicate this add node and this blur one, plug it in here, blur it even more, like 15 I think, and plug it in here. Okay, it is a lot better. One thing that can make it even cooler is if we apply a glare node, and let's just decrease the threshold. You can see that it makes a cool result. Let's just increase the streaks to 16 and maybe increase the threshold just a bit so it does not blow as much. Yeah, that's looking cool. One thing I did on the original example was these particles going on the background and at the front of her, and I won't teach you how to do this, at least not on this tutorial, but I will speak about it briefly. This was created also in Blender. It was a normal particle system. I just turned off the gravity and I created a turbulence force to help with the movement. I think that the standard setup for this turbulence field and for the particles, just taking off the gravity, already makes the particles act like it's acting here. Then you just have to create a group with like 3 or 4 icospheres, then texture these icospheres with a kind of orange-ish color, and then on the particles tab you just have to check that you want the group of the icospheres to be what the particles will be rendered as. Then you just bring the result of this into the compositor in the same Blender file and just apply the focus node. Play with it a little bit to try to get this camera blurred result. And then on your main compositing Blender file, you just add another alpha over and import the particles that you rendered out. Okay, the next thing I want to show you how to do is this blue animated texture. It is really easy to do, and I'll show you how, but I won't include this on our original composition. Okay, just open up a new scene on Blender, delete the light and the cube, and this file needs to have the same resolution than our textures have, so it will have to be 2000 by 2000, then 100%, then 16 of anti-alias, then 16-bit, no compression, then hit 7 to go to the top view, then Ctrl-Alt-0 to bring the camera there. Then you just create a new plane, scale the plane, create a new black material, hit shadeless, choose the color black, then just create a new circle, tap in to edit mode, hit E to extrude, then S to scale, then tap out and create a white material for it, hit shadeless, choose white. Now we just have to animate this circle, so we need to turn on the auto key, then scale it down a bit, then on the frame 20 you just scale up just so that it goes away from the camera. And now let's just bring our dope sheet and let's duplicate this a few times. Let's just Shift D, duplicate, select everything, Shift D, duplicate, then select everything, Shift D, duplicate, until it reaches the 250 mark in there. This is the animation that we have. Okay, let's bring this into the compositor. Click Use Nodes, and let's just make a render. Okay, now let's bring in our texture. So Shift A, image. This is the one we want. Let me just show you. This is the one. Then we want to bring in a set alpha, and we want this circle animation to be the alpha for this texture. So you plug the texture in there and the circle animation in the alpha, and this is what we have. We don't really want this hard edge, so we can just blur this a little bit. Just plug in a blur in there. I think 40 would be good. Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you to just change to 2997 FPS, which is the frame rate for our main project. And then you just have to set up where you want to save this animation and then click animation. Okay, I won't do this because I won't include this on our main project, but I just wanted to show you guys how to do it. Okay, let's just go back to our old project, and if you want to import that animated texture, you just have to duplicate this mesh one more time like this and put it in here, and then create another texture and just import that texture right in here. The setup for this in here is the same. The only thing that Blender will ask you is how many frames it has, and you just have to put 250 and you're ready to go. Then you just have to go back into the compositor and do pretty much the same thing you did for the yellow texture. So you can just duplicate this one here and create another add node in here, select the animated texture in here that you will create on the render layer tab, and then you just plug in the result of this on the input of the new add layer you just created. As we didn't do this, I'm just going to delete this. I just wanted to show you how you could do it on your own. Let's move on with our comp here. The next thing we have to do is to create a background. I won't make any particles and stuffs, but I already showed you guys how to do, so if you want to do on your own, you're free to go. So let's just create a color mix. Change the input here. And then check this alpha. And then let's choose a cool color here. Okay, I think that's not bad. Now, next thing we can do to help blend these stuffs together is to create a new color mix. Change this to add. Then let's create a blur filter. Blur. Let's blur like, I don't know, 500 on the X and like just 10 pixels on the Y. Let's plug this in here, this in here. I just want to create a general glare to help blend the stuffs together. So let's just decrease the factor to something around 0.1. Okay, that's not bad. Maybe 105. Yes, that's cool. Another thing that we can do to increase the look of it is to put some lens distortion. Let's click on projector, and here on the distort we can put something around, I don't know, that one. Let's see how it goes. You just have to hit this fit button. You don't need to be projector. Maybe 0.05, maybe less, 0.03. Okay, then here on this dispersion, maybe something like this. This dispersion is a simulation of some lenses distortion, and it kind of displaces the RGB channel. It is a cool look, but you have to be careful not to overuse it. But I think on this case it's looking cool. So let's just go back and see everything that we did here. First of all, we just make her skin look clean. We just cleaned the markers of it, and then we took care of taking off the green background. And after that we just included a few layers of texture to give this look. Then on one of those layers we put it some blur and some glare just to stylize it a little bit. And after that we just blurred a version of it and added to it so that everything could blend better. After that we just put it some lens distortion, and this is the result. I'm gonna render this animation out and I'll come back, okay? Okay guys, so this is the result of our tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I hope you guys like it, and if you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel for more cool tutorials. Also subscribe to my main channel, share with your friends, and that's it guys. Thanks for watching.